This device here, sitting next to me on the bench, is a rolling press for jewellery making, and I'm making this up for a friend of mine who managed to get the rollers but couldn't afford a new set of rolls or new stand, and so I asked if I could do something for him. So I had someone give me some old injection moulding tools, and so I've cut those down, milled those out to turn into the frame for the rolls. And it's working out reasonably well. There are a few bits and pieces that are of interest, so I thought I'd just talk about a few of those. One of them is the adjustment here for the roll heights. There's some gears to go into here, but here there is a nut which I've got secured into this top plate just so I can get the phasing of the threads right. It uses what I refer to as a cotter, and it's one of several ways of holding things in the shop, where you want to clamp something one part to another that you can adjust it. One of them is something similar to this, where you have a hole, something goes through it, and then there's a thumb screw tightens up. It's alright, but when you think about what you're relying on the friction between this part and that part. In terms of alignment that way, there can be a little bit of movement, so there are better ways of doing it. Another way is, as has been done on this rather battered looking indicator stand, is a clamp like that, where you've got a screw thread, holds two parts together and clamps onto the thing. That works, but the downside to that is that on the slit side you generally have to have a bit of an overhang to get things to work properly. And as an aside, if you're making one of these and it's not quite as soft as you'd like, if you've got a room here, you can extend the slit out on this side of the hole too, and that'll help clamp things. That's one way of doing things. The last way is the way I've done it here. This is an indicator stand, an indicator bracket that goes into my lathe, and it's got what I call a cotter there. As you can see, it's very close there. You can have that on either side. It's a very compact mechanism, and what it is, if we take that apart and that bit drops out, is, take that up close to the camera, it's basically a nut with a scallop in it and a, for want of a better term, a washer, a bush with the other side of the scallop. And when that screw is tightened up, those two parts come together and pinch on the round part. The housing that it goes into has got two holes, and they just meet in the middle, and that's how it all works. So on here I've got a similar arrangement that I've drilled into here to hold that nut there, and I'll be talking a little bit about how I actually made that, because they're not a difficult thing to do once you know the trick. So one of the first things I have to do here is actually recover from a mistake. In my enthusiasm, I drilled the large hole there for that bush without thinking about how I was going to clamp it, and then I realised, well, yeah, if I'm going to use a cotter, I need to have that hole plugged so that when I drill the hole through, I don't have the drill kicking over into the hole, as drills are prone to do. So yeah, first thing I'm going to be doing, I've got a loose plug in there, or it's a reasonably good fit, it's within 1/10 of the hole size, but I'm going to weld this tab on using a convenient screw hole which is actually in the plate. These are all parts of an old set of injection moulding dies, and that way I can drill through there without actually damaging, or without having the hole kick offline, because then when I put my cotter in, I'm going to be boring down through there and taking out that scallop. Bodge, fix, repair, done. Plug goes in and should screw in quite nicely to the hole. Just a little tip that I learnt some time ago. If you ever have to put a close fitting plug into a hole, if you give it a bit of a rotation, that generally helps get it seated, get it in there. If you just try to push it in, you'll tip and you'll have all sorts of strife. So just a tool. Here I am set up to drill my first hole. I've got my plug in place. Because this is an old injection moulding tool and it's been cut down from all sorts of things, there are 2 holes there. So one of the first things I need to do is basically use a 1/2 inch cutter to do a bit of a spot face, just to get it down flat, so I can then put a centre drill in and then drill down. I'll need to drill down to about there somewhere, so that's going to be interesting in it as well, because I'm near the bottom of my travel. So I'm about halfway down my hole. I want it to be 50 millimetres, around about 2 inches deep, so that'll take us past here. It's drilling down with a 5 millimetre pilot drill to lessen the drill force, but after a while the drill doesn't clear chips very well. So what I've done is I've stopped about halfway down. I've put in my 12 millimetre drill, which is the size I'm going for finally, and I'll drill down with that, and then I may switch back to the 5 mil to do the rest of it, depending on how well this drills. So I pushed on with the 12 millimetre drill. It seems to have done the job. I was pulling chips out every so often with the vacuum cleaner and pumping a bit of WD-40 into it to keep it cool. And now if I open that up, you can just see there the cutaway hole, and that would certainly cause problems if you tried drilling that just with that drill straight in. That's the amount it's taken out of the plug. The plug is unfortunately scrap, because we don't like to waste things, but it's done its job. It's made its point. So now I make up the cotter blank, rebore that hole to take the scallop out of the cotter blank, and then I can cut the cotter blank and do all sorts of things there. This is what I've got so far. The large bored hole, the hole that I just drilled in the edge of the plate, and that's the overlap. Now what I've got to do, I've turned up a round pin. I've tapped it both ends for 2 different reasons, and I'm now going to put that in there and re-bore drill that hole. So here's the plate clamped down to the mill. There's a pin that I've turned up, which is a reasonably close fit for the hole that I've just drilled. I've used the sheet metal strap that I had on the previous part with the plug, and I'm going to put that in there and then clamp that. So the reason for that is we don't want this rotating. We're going to be boring in there and we're going to get a scallop. Now once that's done, this end is tapped to hold onto that screw. This end is tapped because when that scallop is there, I'll be parting through there. This end will remain threaded as a nut. This end I shall drill out to a clearance hole for the screw that I'm putting down there, which is going to be an M6. I'll probably shorten that so the head sits a little bit flush as well, and then that will be my cotter. Here's the hole. As you said, I've got the tab clamped with a pipe clamp, all I had that was long enough, and using an annular cutter, which is what I used to cut this hole in the first place, I've scalloped the thing, as the pin. As you can see, if I'd left that in there, I could have just gone straight through with the annular cutter and everything would be wonderful. But because I drilled that out before I started thinking about how to clamp it, I've had to go back and do the patch thing. So here's the final product. As you can see, it's been parted off. I used a 1.6 parting blade that I have, but you could have easily hacksawed that and then cleaned up the ends. The important thing is not to lose too much of the middle there. You need just enough for it to be able to clamp, but that's about it. This part here remains threaded, and this part here has been drilled out for a clearance hole for the bolt. The length I've actually chosen because this was the length bolt I had on hand, but if you had a longer bolt you could have it further out if you wished. To install, you just slide the whole thing in like that until the scallops line up. Put in whatever it is you're trying to retain, in which case this is a threaded bush, and then as you can see that turns quite freely. Do up the screw, and that's now quite solid. And if I back that off, say a turn, and get a spanner out, it's a bit sticky, but there it is. Okay, so it gives you quite a strong, grip on a round part. Putting it back up that way, I can now put a circlip on there to retain that, so the bush doesn't fall through, and then I can install the screws. That's my take on making up cotter clamps. I hope that's useful to people, and please share it around if you find it so. So thanks to those who've inspired me and helped me on my journey, and I hope this helps you.